So I am spotlighting my video and I am muting you all. I think you're all on mute anyway. And has just gone 12 o'clock and I can see that most of you here, I know that one of us is going to be a little bit late, so you'll be able to join. Open the classroom door and quietly join when she is ready. So the thing to do now is to open up that chat box, which will be put on my laptop. It'll be the bottom. You hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen, and that will be the place for you to ask any questions as I'm going along working. If you're able to stay for the Make and Create session and you want to, you can save your question up for then, and you can ask me live when I take you off mute and we can have a proper chat. So just to reassure you, that's the bit of the class that I don't record, so that you can stay private. So here we are on a week. I hate, why do I always start off like this? Week, what week are we on? Week 3? I think it is week 3. Last week we made the embroidery hoop wall hangings by stitching with flowers, and I must say, you impress me every time, but I was blown away by the work that you did, and also the way you presented it. One I saw on I think it was on a blue background, just as a swathe going through the middle. It was a beautiful decorative one with lots of pastel colours, and others as well. I don't mean to leave you out if you are one of the people I didn't mention, but they're absolutely fantastic. And I don't know whether you've seen, but in my weekly newsletter, I have been showcasing your work as it comes in. I've been doing a block of 4, so it just happens to be the first 4 people that I come across. So if you want to be featured in this week's newsletter, you will need to send me your work as soon as you can, and then I will put it in the newsletter. So I'm going to put that carefully to one side. And just getting a note there about work commitments on the side, so that's great. So that's the beauty of being at the Zoom Flower class, isn't it? You can pop in and pop out as your other commitments are, take on your time. Getting all fumbly with my words this morning. What I wanted to talk about, as ever, is what we're going to be doing next week. Next week, we're going to be making corsages, or sort of supercharged buttonholes. So it'd be interesting to know for next week whether you've got experience of making buttonholes and to what level you want me to take you with next week's class. So you will need some basic materials. So first of all, you'll need buttonhole tape. So this might look like the pot tape that you hold down your flower foam with, but it isn't. This is a slightly stretchy tape that isn't sticky, but it does stretch, and if you stretch it too far, it breaks. Mine is a plasticky texture to it, but you can also get it in a sort of crepe paper form, where you can't so much stretch the tape as I've just stretched it. It just eases a little bit. So it's your preference of what you want. I have put links in the workshop sheet for next time. Possibly, I think I linked to this one, but whatever you've got to hand, it will be perfect. But it's not the sticky tape. The way your corsage tape works is you sort of stretch it and then it sort of contracts back into place. You'll also need some wires as well. So next week we are going to be doing some fine work. So you're going to be using those fine motor skills a little bit. And again, if you have got issues with your fingers and hands, let me know and I will try and think about how we can adapt what we're doing. I've got 2 kinds of wires with me. I've got green wires here, which I have bought a whole pack because I use it a lot. This originally weighed 1 kilogram, and my wires are 0.56 wires, so it's 0.56 millimeters, and mine are 23 centimeters long. So you'll find when you go online that the wire lengths vary, which may affect the price that you pay. And also you just need to make sure that you know how many wires you're buying. Are you buying a kilo of them? Are you buying 20 of them, 10 of them, 100 of them, just so that you know. But if we're making a single corsage, you'll probably only need, depending on the flowers you're going to use, need half a dozen of wires like this. So you may have some lying around in your toolbox already. And then the next thing we're going to be using are rose wires. These are the little fine silver wires, and I keep mine in this little plastic Tupperware style box. So I'll lift those up and you'll barely be able to see them. We'll be using some of those as well. And again, you probably only need, you know, half a dozen per buttonhole. It depends what you're going to be wiring up. The other thing you might want to have as well is a corsage pin, so that you can actually wear your corsage around at home and show it off. So I will show you the basic wiring technique, and then we will up our skills a little bit. And what you bring with you for next week is all down to your personal style. I did put a picture in with a handout, and that was featured a rose, and then it had lots of other interesting ingredients. I shall put myself on the spot here to try and remember what they were. I definitely saw, I think, some hydrangea florets in it. I think there was a lovely, a sort of very intricate leaf, which I think was a sneckia or a dusty millet leaf. You want to think of what your main flower is going to be, and then all the added extras. And it's the added extras that sort of transitions your decorative item from being a plain old simple buttonhole to being something that's a little bit more exciting. You're asking about magnets in the chat there. Yes, you can use magnets. So if you're going to be using magnets, you'll need glue. These magnets are really, really strong. And I actually use these magnets as on my fridge for pinning my notices in place. They are really strong. The downside of magnets is that if you're making it for somebody who's got a pacemaker, it will put their pacemaker out of rhythm. So if you ever do make them, you need to just do that own health and safety check about whether anyone's got a pacemaker. But they are really great, the magnets. I've worn them before. I've made a buttonhole before, but put it in my hair and held it with the magnets. That's quite nice if you want to do a hairpiece or on a bag, something like that. So yes, if you've got magnets, I will try and remember to dig my magnets out, and I can show you how to attach those. And yes, we can talk about that next week. Otherwise, if we talk about it now, there'll be nothing to talk about for next week. So keep those questions going. Yes, you're asking whether you can have a link to the magnets. I will try and remember that, and either put it in the newsletter that goes out of this video, or I will try and remember to put it in the Facebook group. And if I forget, please do remind me. So shall we talk about this week? We're going a little bit modern this week. And this is one of my favorite kind of projects. It's that real mashup between a crafted project and flower arranging. So sometimes we do pure flower arranging, a little bit like last week. I would say it's much more of a crafted piece. And this week we got the lovely balance between the two, before next week we go on to the pure floristry skills. So my main piece of equipment this week, or my mechanics, is my piece of wood. Now, we've talked about this piece of wood before. This came from the works. It's got a long handle, but when I originally decided to do this piece, I just imagined an offcut of wood. So don't be put off by the fact that I've got a long handle on my piece of wood if you've just got a bit of scrap wood that you found in your shed or garage. You need a plinth, a base, to do your arrangement on. It may even be that you've got a log slice or something like that that you don't want to go long and thin. You might be making your arrangement in the round, so to speak. So I got that, and I seem to have a whole workshop of extra materials here. I've got a sheet of scrap paper. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. I've got a pen and a ruler. These aren't necessary, but if you want to do something, an arrangement that's really neat and precise, doing a little bit of marking out and sort of sketching and thinking beforehand may well help you. I am going to have to make holes in my wooden block to put my kebab sticks in. So I'm going to use a bradawl. So it looks a little bit like a screwdriver, but it's got a point at the end. If you've got a drill, you might be more comfortable with a drill, but I've only got a bradawl. And to use this, I'll show you how you use it. You sort of put all your force behind it as if you were screwing something in. I've actually got a hammer with me as well. So this is a really lightweight jewelry hammer. And I thought I might even bang my bradawl into my wood, because you want to create a nice hole in order that you can insert your kebab sticks. So I have got these kebab sticks straight out of my kitchen drawer, and I have got half a dozen or so that are really quite chunky for a kebab stick. And then I've got, which leads me to believe, I think these must be several years old, that the quality of kebab sticks may have gone down over time, because that is the another packet. Can you just see, looking there, this one's a little bit chunky and this one is slightly finer. So it'll be interesting to see how chunky your kebab sticks are, or perhaps you're using garden canes. Bearing in mind that we're creating this sort of high-rise structure, and it's all going to be, the watchword here is how firm are your mechanics, and is thinking about actual balance, because on top of this kebab stick, not only have I got to firmly secure it into my wood base, but I'm going to be attaching my test tubes onto my kebab stick using my favourite paper covered wire. Note to self, I need to buy some more. And once you've got all that weight, although individually everything doesn't weigh very much, it does add a little bit more weight. Things might become a little bit unstable, and this might be a project where you want to do some proper gluing in. So I have got my hot glue gun off to the side. For me, that is an instant fix for the purposes of this classroom demonstration. If you're wanting to do something, you want to make up your mechanics perhaps to enjoy now, or you want to reuse it over the summer months, it may be worthwhile thinking about using a proper wood glue, gluing wood to wood and making your mechanics really, really firm. I'm just sort of giving you a disclaimer really that my kebab sticks do actually balance in my wood without glue, but I'm conscious that once I start adding the weight of my flowers and my test tubes and my water, they may become a little bit wobbly. Hence, I will be using my hot glue, but that doesn't, it's a little bit brittle. So if you are going to want to use this again and again, you may want to use a better glue. So in terms of flowers, as well as the kebab sticks I've got going up, I've also got some offcuts of kebab stick as well, because I think I might need to create a sort of lattice work effect on top of my kebab sticks, just to hold the structure together so it doesn't wobble off to the side. So some of these I think are probably kebab sticks I've cut down, but looking at them, I think these might be leftovers. You know, when you buy a supermarket bunch and it has the picks in it, the glittery cone or lotus seed head at Christmas, I think probably I've cut the pick to size, and then I've got all these offcuts, so I will probably be using those. And then in terms of flowers, you're going to need minimal flower and as lightweight and wispy as possible, because again, the test tubes aren't very big. Even if you've got a slightly larger size, they're not particularly big. And the time you've got water in there and a couple of stems, you're not going to have any space. So I have got a jam jar here full of some of these are offcuts. I've got a tiny bit of freesia. I've got some lisianthus, some offcuts of a chrysanthemum, solidaga, and then from my garden this morning, the leggy forget-me-nots, and the native geranium, lovely pink here, and then the spurge, euphorbia, and that's got a milky sap to it. So I will show you how you can get over the problem of sealing in that milky sap. So if you are ready, I'm going to bring in the camera over the top so you can see what I'm doing close up with my mechanics. And then when I've got all my mechanics in place, I'll then bring the camera back to me and show you the arrangement. So I'm imagining at the end of the class, we'll have a plank of wood with lots of sticks upright, a sort of plinth across the top with this flowery haze going across the outside, going across the middle. And then I don't know how long your kebab sticks are, or whether you're substituting something else, but if you ever do want to recreate this and you're not using kebab sticks, as a rule of thumb, if you're planning to use this table centerpiece as a table centerpiece and you're going to have people sitting down at the table talking to each other, a rule of thumb that you don't want your flower arrangement to be any higher than elbow to fist, in order that you can see over the flowers and continue to talk. Of course, you could go really tall and make it really high and then not have any flowers shorter than the top of your head. But I think probably that is for another day. So I will bring the second camera in and spotlight that, and then we'll get on with a preparation for our mechanics. So bear with me as I move around a little bit. So I've got my board here, and we're going to be making holes in the board in which to put our kebab sticks in. And what you could do here is you could merrily go along punching holes in your board randomly where you thought you want to go, or we can do it in a slightly more planned way. So I thought it would be good to plan. So I have got a sheet of paper here, and it's an A4 sheet of paper, which is about the right size for my board. Ideally, if you've got a sheet of paper that's as big as your board, you might be more comforted in what we're going to do here. And I would then take my pen and trace around the board. Obviously, I can't go around there because it will be on the kitchen table, and place it back in again. But I do know that where I've placed my piece of paper, I've got a little bit of an overhang here and a little bit of an overhang here. So I know that when I take my board away, I'm going to end up with a piece of paper that goes over the middle of my board. And then I'm not going to spend too much time doing this because I've done it already. But to show you what I did, I then measured what the distance was between these two lines, basically how big is my board, and what the length of my board was, and then just did a little bit of basic maths and thought, well, how many of these kebab sticks do I want to have? And I'd quite like to have them in quite a regulated place. So I'm just going to guess this bit for the moment. And it may be that you decide to have 2 rows of your kebab sticks going down. And instead of guessing like I am here, where they go, you will have measured them out so that you will get the holes in the right place. And it may be if you wanted 3 lines, you'd shuffle it down a bit, or you might want to have 4 lines. And then you will use that as the guide for making your holes. So imagine it is all marked out properly. What you then do is, with your paper in place, and if you're worried about it moving around, you could always put some sticky tape down to hold it in place. You then take your braggle, and with a really firm movement, you puncture a hole in there. And if you felt that your wrists weren't strong enough, you could use a hammer, or perhaps even a hammer and nail if you don't have a braggle, and dump, 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 make your hole. So it's a little bit time consuming to begin with. If you don't want to measure out, that's fine. If you think you can eye it up, you go ahead with it. But I think it might pay off just to take a little bit of time to actually measure these distances out in order that you get an even placement of your materials. So that is exactly what I have done on the other side of my board. So I have got all these puncture marks on here, and if I was to show you the actual method I did, just so I can line it up, if I applied some force, I would push through and go push, 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 like that. And then if I felt I needed, it's not going to go really deep, but it's really annoying. It just makes a little bit of a hole like that. So it's not a particularly deep hole. And if you were going to be using a drill, you could drill a tiny bit deeper, but you would need to have first measured out how deep your board is, and then make sure you don't drill right the way through. You're only drilling 3/4 of the way through. So when I come to add my sticks, you can see that if this is by luck really more than by judgment, actually it holds my canes quite well. They've got that sharp point and they do hold quite well. But as I said before in the introduction, I'm just a little bit concerned that once I've got the weight of the test tubes on the top, and there's a bit of water in there, and the plant material, that's going to make everything a little bit unstable. So I will have to glue them in. But before I glue them in, I'm actually going to attach the test tubes to my kebab sticks. I'm just going to move that out of the way a little bit. So kebab stick, paper covered wire, and a test tube. Conscious that everything I'm using today is a little bit pale, so hopefully you can see it okay. And what I'm going to do here is to twist my paper covered wire around the top of my test tube. I've wrapped it round a couple of times and then twist tie on. So if you haven't got paper covered wire, you will need something to tie on with. It may be that you're using a conventional border string, in which case you have to be quite firm with your knot, or perhaps you're using a decorative wool, or you've got a bullion wire. Bullion wire might not be strong enough. You might have an aluminium wire or the real wire. But you'll need something you can bind onto your test tube tightly, but not so tightly that you smash your test tube, which you can then attach onto your cane or your kebab stick. So I've just set mine down probably 1 centimetre from the top, like that. And then I'm going to wrap my paper covered wire down the test tube. And you decide how densely you want this wrap to be. You want it to be a lightweight wrap. In fact, you even want to wrap it down. You just want to hold it fast with that first fixing. I quite like the decorative effect of this. And you'll see, I'm holding this quite tight. There is a little bit of movement here. So what I'm doing when I get down to the bottom is I then wrap the paper covered wire around the kebab stick on its own. It's a bit awkward doing that under the camera, but I'll show you when I've finished. I've done a few wrappings at the bottom here. So I've gone down the test tube, a few wrappings down the bottom, and then I'm going to go back up the top, up to the start, trim off the excess, and twist tie together. And that makes it nice and firm, but decorative at the same time. So you don't want to watch me do loads and loads more, but I will just do one more. Try to keep my hands out of the way of the camera. Finding my, oh, here it is, the beginning of my paper covered wire. So a couple of twists to start, and then twist together. So that's all that's done is attach the paper covered wire onto the test tube. I'm then going to attach the test tube to the kebab stick. So if I cut that, I won't have to worry about it trailing over the place. So round you go. And when you do this yourself, it will literally take seconds. Just I'm trying to do it so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm just sort of drawing it down. I get to the end and it'll slip around. So then I'm going to do these two little wraps over the kebab stick itself. I'm going, sorry, I just have to move that out of the way so I can twist it like that. And that's anchoring it at the bottom and then back. So I've sort of done a medium thickness of twisting. If you really like this look, and it's a way of actually of disguising, if you're using the plastic test tubes, you could go really heavily on this. And if you've got, we were talking about green test tubes last week. If you've got, particularly decorative test tubes, you might not want to do all this wrapping on there. Depends what you've got. So that is what I'm ending up with. And that is our mechanic of the day. So I will then reach around for my hot glue gun and we can start adding these in to the board. I might concentrate for time. I might just go for the central section. So a dab of hot glue. And the other thing about hot glue, it's not particularly sightly. You end up with this little, please stand, this little daub of clear glue to start, and then it will dry to sort of a milky colour. And I do think that if you were able to do this with perhaps using a drill, using some wood glue, you would really be able to finesse your finish. I have already got some of my other kebab sticks already prepared, so we'll go along here. Now this is the reason why I'm going to do the extra lattice work at the top. I just want to make sure everything is really firm, and if it doesn't feel like it's firm, we could try with that. And feel that wobbling, I've gone off to the side. Very gently with my little hammer, I can hammer it at the top. You can even get, if you've got pliers, clamp those around the bottom and actually tap, my hands are the pliers. If you tap the plier blades of the handle, that will help hold things in place. I'm just going to go through and just tap that one. I think I tapped pretty much all of them. That's definitely one. I just find with the hammer, pushes it in a little bit further than I could do with the natural strength of my hand. So I will put in 8 in total, and then when we make and create afterwards, I may well extend the number I'm using. So you need to get enough up there just so you're creating, you know, you've got something to put your flowers in, and you are, you know, making use and getting actually in proportion to the length of the piece of wood I've got here. I don't put many uprights in. It's going to be sort of dominated by the length of the wood and not balanced by the visual uprights. Top tip to you as well, don't rest your glue on the lap when you're working. I've now got hot glue stains on my comparatively new jeans. So I can see here that you can't see the tops of my sticks. That one hasn't got a deep enough hole in there. So I will come back on, so I don't glue my bradawl in place here. Oops. Oops, I think that's taken. And I'll glue my cardigan to the piece of wood. So this is I've got more holes than I have kebab sticks at the moment, but that's purely for demonstration purposes. So you decide how many rows of sticks you want to use and how deep you want to go. I've gone for 4 rows, which would have been 4, 8, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times 4. Why did I set myself that task? That's 24, isn't it? Well, I'm probably showing myself up now. I've not been able to do my mental arithmetic, but that is what I am ending up with, is that from the top. Actually, if I raise my camera a little bit, we should be able to do this next bit from up above. Let me do that. That should work. Put the hot glue gun down. Okay, I think you could probably see that okay. So my concern now is that this is going to be a little bit wobbly. So I thought it would strengthen it up to think about adding in a cross bracing of the extra pieces of kebab stick. So I'm going to take my paper covered wire, and just to make it easier, I'm going to snip some lengths. These are probably 5 or 7 centimeters long, just so I can make it more usable, and then decide where I want to go with this. So across the edges like this, I could go straight on. The thing about going straight is I don't want it to look too geometric. And although these won't particularly show, I don't want it to look you know, too planned. So I'm attaching my wire on, my paper covered wire, twisting it on and twisting it around. So I've got one anchor point, and I'll do exactly the same on the other side as well. So that means I've only got to twist tie onto the more delicate items here, and I can lay that across and twist tie that in place. And this will be the moment of truth. I can just slide that along a bit. Have you got your mechanics sufficiently structurally sound? Is the glue gun doing its job, or do you need to go back in and think, well, I can do my prep, but I really need to get some hot glue? So I'll just do another one to demonstrate, and I will need to go back in and add more pieces as we work. This is just the demonstration piece of glass, so you can see what I am doing here. Let's just move some of that clutter out of the way. So I have attached another 2 pieces of the paper covered wire to my kebab stick. I've nearly attached the second one. Then this is a bit longer, so I think I can skip there. I can go from position 1 to position 3 with this one. So again, perhaps I've been a tiny bit mean with the amount of paper covered wire I had on this one. I can twist and hold that in place, and twist and hold in place over here. So this will be so much easier for you to do because you won't be trying to work around a camera and a tripod. But you can see what I'm doing here is just trying to brace those pieces together a bit more. So when I'm working later, I'll probably take out some of my flowers and I will brace these ends here. So why don't I come back to my full face camera and you can see. I hope that was clear. Now, are these kebab sticks sturdy? Well, there's only one way we're going to find out, and that is when I start adding my materials in. I think they're fine. And in fact, when I was doing this before, I felt that the kebab stick was holding up quite well without any glue, but I just a little bit nervous about it. And perhaps as I've got a bit more space here, I will do one more fixing. So paper covered wire around the edge of the kebab stick here and around the other. And I'm guessing at this point where the paper covered wire needs to be. There is a tiny little bit of give. So I know that if I need to, I can slide these around a little bit. So I might just go one more, slide that round, and then twist tight. And this is the beauty of the paper covered wire because I'm not having to fiddle with string and tying knots. So hold that together like that. So I'm not going to overdo it. Dare I fold that round? You can see where I'm going with this, though, can't you? I've just got a little bit of a crisscrossing going on. Probably I'd want to have one more on there. I shall do that later on. What I'm then going to do is sort of create this grid. It's all very geometric at the moment, and now I'm wanting to soften the edges a little bit. And my idea is I'll create a sort of floating scene across the top, almost as if you don't know how the flowers have been fixed in place. So to soften this up, I'm going to be using some ivy trails, so picked from my garden this morning. And what I'm actually going to do is to take the leaves off by sliding it off. So I'm using this as a piece of vine, which again, if I wanted to, I could thread and weave around. I would say, though, if you are thinking of threading and weaving, I think this is more a piece where you are lying things on top and then lashing them into place. I won't try and do that now. So what I'm going to do here, because I want these in place, where I've left the little tails of the paper covered wire, you remember I've twisted them and then sort of left the two top pieces off. They then become really handy binding points for these extra pieces of plant material. So that is why you want to cut your wire sufficiently long, but you obviously don't want it to have it too long. It does give you these little points where you can attach this extra material in. And of course that's flying off. I don't think you can see that flying off quite a long way over here, which is too long for me. I don't mind a little bit of an overhang, but it's going off in a rather bizarre direction. So I'll trim that off there. And then I could use this other piece here. So you could start to build up a sort of structure. And this is, a softened version of those kebab stick lattice that went across. I think that's holding with this one piece there. And there's, if you want to have the ivy leaves on, you could use that. I just feel they're going to be a little bit dominant for what I want to use. If you had Muhlenbeckia with the tiny leaves, that would look lovely with the greenery kept on. So I'm just sort of letting it go where it wants to go, but just lashing it on where I can, just for the beginning pieces, because I don't want a gust of a breeze and everything to fall down. So a little bit of a twist tie there, and perhaps a little bit of a twist tie over here. So perhaps if I stand up, and you see that a little bit, it's just starting to fill out a little bit. And again, it depends, you don't need to do this step, you could skip this step entirely. It depends about the look that you're after, but that would be the way that you could attach other plant material to start to accentuate the horizontal form here, just to give it a contrast, but it isn't all about the vertical sticks. You're creating this hovering platform. So you either need to add in a few more kebab sticks for support and then soften that with a vine, but you don't necessarily need to use the vine. The next step now is we're ready to add our plant materials. So those of you who've been watching me on Facebook know that I've picked up this vintage, this glass syringe. So this is the first time I'm using it. So I'm dropping in some water there. It makes me feel like I'm doing, you know, complex work in a hospital here. So I can put my water in, squeezing it down. Again, you get the idea. I will just do a couple of these and then I will fill in with my water afterwards. You don't want me to start adding all that water in. And then the flower arranging itself is a sort of secondary item, really. What I'm going to be doing is doing a cut and a plonk, just to keep that light, hazy look a little bit. Now, those of you who spotted the spurge or euphorbia are going to say to me, well, how are you going to tackle, Julie, that milky sap that comes out of your spurge? And it does start to drip out again. I'm not sure the camera will pick it up, but it does start to drip out very, very quickly. And anything that's of latex, once that's in the water, it'll start to sour the water and potentially shorten the life of your flowers. So what you need to do is I've got a little night light here, and I'm going to light my flame. You're taking extra care with a lit candle. Please stay alight. So I've got my little candle there. And I'm going to hold my spurge up to my test tube and decide where I want to cut. So I'm not going to go particularly high. Again, I'm conscious, try not to say I'm worried, I'm conscious about the bounce. So this isn't a tall arrangement with heavy plant materials. The height has been determined by the length of the kebab sticks. So everything else, there'll be a little bit of movement here, but I'm not really tall. So I then take the stem of the spurge and I hold it into the flame just until the end blackens. And actually what it does is it bubbles slightly, and that will seal in the end of the stem, so that spurge won't go leaking out. So I've got over my shoulder, I've got my first bit of green in, and then you'd work your way down. So perhaps for completeness, I go down and you know, a little bit of something into each of the pots. Put it down like that, and in, and then come back with my second material. So having got these in the garden, I'm going to use these rather than my sort of florist and shop-borne products. So I'll cut that off the main stem. And everything I always cut is always about a finger long. And you just make a pretty little display. So you saw me take the leaves off my, I'm going to sit with one shoulder up so you can see it against the background. I will put a photograph in so you can see, but I have got a little bit of natural greenery on my geranium, and the same actually if you use Lysianthus, there's always a little bit of natural greenery there. So if you're thinking this is all a little bit too sparse, actually you can incorporate the greenery in there. Just don't go too greenery heavy. And these literally are those little offcuts that you get when you are arranging your other flowers that I've had in a little jam jar on my windowsill. And you just make this, I'm thinking of a little fairy garden actually. I've got some solidago, little frond of that, and I shall take off the lower leaves that's not in the water, trim it down to length and work my way along. And you just carry on until you are done. Let me just cut some of the forget-me-nots. I'm conscious of my candle there. I'm going to move that out of the way. And slide them in. So this is all about the construction this week. The actual arranging of the flowers is the easy bit. We're just doing a very designer cut and plonk. So I'm conscious that looking at the camera, I'm not sure you can actually see what I'm doing, but I will definitely finish this off and put a picture in the right place. So dare I move this forward a little bit so you can see. I don't know if it's better against my jumper or not. Not again, that candle's in the way again. Candle's over there. So that's the idea that we're going for, is this elevated look. And you can see, even though I've only put flowers in 4 of my test tubes, it does start to fill out quite quickly, so don't be worried about it looking really sparse. And actually I think that the geranium leaves are just the right hint of something solid that the more delicate flowers can you know, be a foil to, or perhaps I should say the other way around, the greenery is becoming a foil for the delicate flowers. One of these arrangements where it looked probably better in silhouette, not too busy a background, otherwise you'll lose your flowers. So I'm going to have fun probably as soon as we go into the making and creating. So I'm probably going to take all my flowers out and then fill up my test tubes and then work on it in a more considered way. And I've got my 8 uprights. I'll have to decide whether I want to put in, I've got space for 2 more either side, whether I want to elongate it a little bit, but the length is entirely up to you. But you do want the finished arrangement to look in proportion with your board, although I have got this a very long, exaggerated handle. So we'll have to see about that. Perhaps if I was to do this on board again, I'm still deciding whether to cut that handle off and just use it as a rectangular piece of wood. So I'm going to draw the video to a close now. So I think you've got the demonstration, the idea of where we're going with this project. If you do have any questions when you're rewatching the video, if you make a comment under the video or ask in the Facebook group or reply to the email that I send you out, I'm happy to come back and clarify anything that wasn't particularly clear. So do make use of those comments under the YouTube video. Although I will say that you can watch the video without subscribing to YouTube. I think if you want to make a comment, you have to have logged in, so using your Gmail account. So just the way that you perhaps normally, when you normally make comments, once you're sort of logged in, you're logged in forever, I think. So if you do want to make a comment, you will need to log in to get access to do that. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and then we'll go to live Q&A.